Welcome. Today, happy to have everybody with us today. A couple special guests from the Children's Services Council. Hibiscus is very important to be with them today, and we're going to talk a number of subjects that are very timely. So with me today is Sean Boyle, the Executive Director of the Children's Services Council, and Catherine Hensley, who's the chairperson, of the Children's Services Council. Welcome, and glad to have you here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, I think it's important to recognize in our community that the one thing, there are so many great agencies around here that have one common thought and one common purpose, and it has to do with children. And of course, that's in the name of all of our organizations. Sean, could you give us a little a background on the Children's Services Council and what's happening?
Sure. The Children's Services Council, for those of you who may not know, is an independent district in St. Lucie County that has 5 focus areas. Our first focus is making sure every baby born is a healthy baby.
Okay.
Second thing that we do is we prevent child abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Third thing that we do is we keep kids in school, we keep kids off drugs and alcohol, and we keep kids off the streets. And we do this through a network of programs. We currently fund and provide resources to 54 programs that reach over 34,000 children a year.
Terrific. And again, the mission for the Hibiscus Children's Center is very comparable, and you can see how these programs come together. Our mission is to assist safety for neglected, abused, and abandoned children. And Catherine, you have a whole history of children's activities and everything you do. I don't understand your energy level, but please, if you can share with us a little bit of how the Children's Center or Children's Services Council works together with the other agencies.
Well, Children's Services Council has been around for quite a while, and there were 2 people who were dynamic people active in our community many years ago, 28 years ago. Judy James, who no longer lives here, but she lives in Florida, and Dr. Bob Gehrig, dentist, who is heavily involved with children's issues. And there was a discussion about a need to have a funding stream for children's prevention and early intervention programs. So there was a real dog and pony show, and it got on the ballot, and it passed very nicely. And since that time, Children's Services Council has been able to help build a network of agencies to pull everybody together with one single focus. And that single focus, of course, is the child.
Mm-hmm.
And try to make sure that we basically put the child in the middle of the table and say what is missing in that child's life to make that child successful and healthy.
Terrific. I keep hearing a common thread here. 28 years ago, 28 years ago, Hibiscus Children's Center was founded by Miss LaVon Tilton as well. So a lot of things in life prepares us to where we are and how we're going to go. Where do we go from here, and what are the biggest issues that are confronting the children here in St. Lucie County?
Sure. You know, at the Children's Services Council, we have the opportunity to meet with the community fairly regularly. Mm-hmm. And we just talked a little bit before we went on air. We have a radio show, talk show, that's actually on this show, or on this station. But we also go to the schools, and we speak to the parent associations and the SAC committees, if you will, as well as we hold community forums, and we're part of those. And what we're hearing over and over again is 2 things. One, after-school programs, things for kids to do to keep them off the streets. And the other thing is support for parents. Parenting help for new parents, struggling parents. And that's really where the relationship between the Children's Services Council and the Hibiscus Children's Center has come into play, in that we provide funding for your Supporting Families in Crisis program.
Absolutely.
That works with those parents that are maybe in a critical crisis, to get them through that crisis and to get them stabilized.
I have to smile a little bit, because when you said that, I recall my father used to tell me that babies don't come with instructions.
Right.
So,
right.
you know, and I was the oldest, so I was the guinea pig as well. And unfortunately, look what happened to me in any event. Catherine, you're also on the Hibiscus Board of Directors and Board of Governors, and as the past chair, how has the community embraced what's happening, not only with Hibiscus, with the children? What are the biggest issues we now need to be addressing ourselves as we go forward?
Well, we have several issues that we need to address regarding our children. Foster care is always a big issue. Foster kids are the least of us most of the time. We have some fantastic foster homes. But, you know, it's expensive to take care of our children correctly, and we have to make sure that we encourage our legislators to put the money where it needs to be to make sure our children are safe, protected, and healthy. St. Lucie County is the only Kids at Hope school district and county in the entire country, and foster kids would be part of that. The mental health component of every child is part of that, is you have to take a child and find out where their weaknesses are, but you don't focus on the weaknesses, you focus on their strengths. And you help empower them and surround them with people who are nurturing and enabling them to be successful no matter what the issue is. So those are that's the main issue right now, the mental health component, and I would say we have right now potentially a change in focus regarding children who are in foster care, and I think we need to be very, very careful about how we watch that.
Absolutely, and as we all are members of 501c3, everybody asks about how do we get our monies, our fundings, and usually it's a collaboration of different agencies from state, federal government grants, and of course donors, fundraising, and activities and events. And at Hibiscus, we have a lot of mental health services that we also work as a collaborative here in St. Lucie County. One of us is our sexual abuse treatment program, which is ranked #1 in the state, which again is just some statistics that on one hand you're proud of, on the other hand we understand that the state of Florida is 3rd nationally in trafficking children, and this is an abomination, really, and this is something that we really need to make sure is on the forefront not only of our legislators but of our community people, and I know there's tons and tons of programs, and again what you said, after school programs is kind of important to me because I reflect back 100 years ago when I was in school. We went to school a little bit longer, we played sports, and we really didn't have the opportunity to get too much in trouble after school. So, but we also had the supervision of either the school or our parents. So, what kind of activities are coming through the Children's Service Council to keep these children occupied?
Well, and you bring up a good point. You know, if you speak to law enforcement, most juvenile crime takes place between the hours of 2 and 7 p.m. Well, school gets out at 2, 3 o'clock. Parents get home around 5, 6, 7 p.m. So we have 12 after-school programs, and they're a variety. It's the Boys and Girls Club that focuses on academic. All of our after-school programs have an academic focus. But the Avenue D Boys and Girls Choir, something I'm sure many of our viewers are very familiar with, was started through the Children's Services Council. That's one opportunity. Another one would be the Multicultural Resource Center that's at the Fort Pierce Magnet School and Dan McCarty, which has a strong focus on academics, or the YMCA down in Port St. Lucie. Altogether, when the school bell rings at the end of the day, thousands of kids are enrolling or going to an after-school program provided by the Children's Services Council.
And again, I think that's so important because we learned a long time the idle mind is the devil's playground, if you will, and I remember hearing that as a child as well, so stay busy. What other programs are necessary to assist the parent side of it today? Well,
yeah, we do. We have what Sean calls the toolbox, which is a variety of programs for training, and that's very, very helpful. Of course, you know, we have the Parent Academy, which is fairly fledgling, but it has a great mission, and that is to give parents what they need to be the best parents. You cannot model something you have not seen. So when we have parents who have come from homes where everybody was working all the time just to be able to feed their family and put a roof over their head, they may not have had the privilege of being able to see the best model of parenting and interaction with children.
Correct.
So by providing services for parents so they know, nobody wants to be a bad parent.
No.
But they may not know how to be a good parent, and they may not have a support group to make sure that they can reach out. So part of our mission is to make sure that happens.
Can I add on to that real quick? One of the, our programs are available to all families in St. Lucie County. It's not for a specific geographic or income. It's available to everybody. And one of our most popular programs is when a mother gives birth to her newborn, and regardless of the hospital, St. Lucie Mom, they spend 48 hours to 72 hours in the hospital. And then they return home, we always say, with the greatest responsibility they are ever going to have. And you can read what to expect when expecting and all that, and be well informed, and I'm speaking from personal experience here, but something happens. I've yet to talk to a parent who they gave birth at 12 p.m. It's always like, oh, it was after 12 hours of labor at 3, 4 a.m. You're stressed, you're tired, and you come home with this greatest responsibility. And we have a program, and it's a voluntary program. All our programs are voluntary. But a registered nurse will come to the home if the parent signs up for it, and perform a home visit. Check on the health of the mother, the health of the baby. I always say the stress level of the father. We've been there, right?
Yes, we have.
And answer any and all questions that those parents may have. And quite literally, this program has saved both mothers and babies' lives who the parents weren't aware that there were health concerns, whether it was the mother that was preeclampsia and wasn't aware and had to be rushed off, or the baby had an issue. But more importantly, what it does is it gives that parent confidence, because, as you know, we talked about foster care and the child abuse system. We focus on preventing families from getting into, abused and neglect situation. All the research shows that if we can get that family to bond early with that child, and that usually happens with that comfort level within the first week, they're less likely to abuse or neglect their child. This is a universal program, and I'm proud to say 86% of all births in St. Lucie County took advantage of that service.
That's fabulous. But there is the other side of it, as you said, the abused, the neglected, and that's where Hibiscus Children's Center has come into it. We have a shelter in Jensen Beach here on the Treasure Coast that is really for the infants, excuse me, up to about 12 years old. And again, these are children through no fault of their own, have somehow found themselves in a situation that just is horrific. Up to the north of us a little bit in Vero Beach, we have the 13 to 18-year-olds, and we have programs that we're working again, because when these children come in, they're traumatized. They absolutely are, from one experience to another. And we have such a great group of volunteers with Hibiscus working together. We have about 120 staff and about 300 volunteers, including all the guilds and the donors in the area. And there are some good stories. In fact, one just happened I would like to relate to you this week. I had a 9-year-old little girl come into my office and with her mother. And she said, Mr. Michael, because a lot of times that's what my name, obviously, nobody can pronounce it, including myself. But she said, I just had a birthday 2 weeks ago. I was 9 years old. And I said, terrific. And she said, well, that's not what I'm here to talk to you about. She said, I heard my mom and dad talking about, since I was little, about Hibiscus Children's Center, and some of the children have gone through some of these terrible things. And my mother had a birthday party where all my classmates could come. And I told her I have all the toys I needed. There's a 9-year-old little girl, the season of giving, and she sat there. So each child brought in a toy for those that did not have it. And, my first inclination was to sit there and hug her, but you can't today. So I hugged her mother and her father. I said, you guys have done such as what parenting's all about. But again, to me, this touched me so much that the children raised in this community actually understand that you're not too young to start to really taking care of the children. And so today, or this holiday season, some children who may not have had a holiday to celebrate will, because of the thoughtfulness of a 9-year-old little girl. And I just thought, how many of us can learn from that as well? So, I mean, there are some heartwarming aspects, because we truly, working with the children here in the county, like anywhere else, we see the positives and we see the negatives and everything in between.
And over the years, what we have found is that we have changed the demographics, in that we are seeing more and more positive and fewer negative. So even though we don't talk about children at risk anymore, we don't have children at risk. We have children at hope. What we have to do is make sure that they are given what they need to be successful. And that, with the baby visitation, if you can afford a designer crib, that's great. But if you can't, that's also great, because you still don't know any more about being a first-time parent, no matter what your financial status is.
Exactly.
But years ago, we found that we had I think it was 2 babies that died in a short time frame because they did not have a crib and where they were placed to sleep. And so we started a program. And what we found out the first go-around is that they would set the crib or the sleeping arrangement, whatever it might have been, out on the street, and somebody else would pick it up and use it. So then we went in and have an arrangement with the Sheriff's Department, and those cribs are destroyed if they're not acceptable.
Okay.
And we haven't had one of those incidents since then. So I was trying to find if there's a gap. And if there's a gap, what can we do to fill it? And we have changed the demographics of kids' success, who were used to be at risk and now they're not. Hope for their families and their parents. And part of that is economic development. That's why those of us on the council and our wonderful staff were involved with everything. Because it has even to do with transportation. Parents can't go to training if they can't get there. Kids may not be able to participate in after-school program if they have no way to get home. So you have to look at everything in a big picture, but when we focus on what's best for kids, then everything else is better.
Absolutely. And a big component, obviously, is the educational process,
right.
not only for children, but also for the parents as well. And I know one of the big initiatives today in society, and one that you guys have done a phenomenal job, is educating children to keep them off of drugs and alcohol. Again, these are something that they may have witnessed because they've seen, let's say, a parent or an aunt or an uncle or just society, or even turned on the television and seen that. How are we working to keep kids educated in that regard?
Yeah, well, first of all of our after-school programs, it's not just, fun and games and singing in the choir. They all have a social responsibility component, which includes talking to them about bullying and staying off drugs and alcohol. But the other thing that we do is everything that we do and that we provide funding for and provide for the community is research-based. Because it's the community's money that we're investing, we want to make sure that what we invest in is going to work. So we have a program that touches every single fifth grader through the New Horizons Student Assistance Program that every fifth grader goes through a Too Good for Drugs and Alcohol program, which is a research best practice program. And that's been implemented in the schools, I believe, for 8 years now. And since we've done that, we've actually seen every 2 years there's a survey done, a blind survey of school districts across the state of Florida, and they survey youth on drug, alcohol, cigarette use, bullying, and we've seen our numbers go down ever since that curriculum's been implemented. So that's one of the ways that we're tackling that. In addition to, we also offer counseling programs for families that include maybe kids that are starting to, it never starts with a child doesn't automatically become an alcoholic or a drug addict right away. They start experimenting. Right. And we have programs that will work with the family when those children start to experiment to turn them away from that.
And obviously, as with anything, prevention is a key component. Right. But there's also an economic component to
Correct.
The community, is there not, about prevention? And Catherine, could you kind of elaborate on that?
I think that the community needs to know that for every dollar we bring in, one of our agencies is able to match it almost dollar for dollar. So we are doubling the amount of money that can go into the programs that are affecting children and families. And that's a key issue, as well as the number of people that are actually employed. It's very significant, especially in a community that tends to have a very high unemployment rate. So, but we think that's a wonderful return on the taxpayer dollar, and it's probably one of the best returns on the taxpayer dollars. And because we can actually track it when we need to about how much $1 prevention here actually pays off in the long run, and sometimes it's not even a very long run. Sometimes it's a fairly short run. Hibiscus is one of those programs that is a best practice. Our Strengthening Families is the national model, right, which is multiple agencies working together. Our community has a pattern of collaboration, and most of that collaboration is around the future for children and their families. And I think it's a wonderful thing. Sometimes we don't recognize what great things are going on here, but I guarantee other places in the state and the country know what's going on with our agencies here.
Right. Most of my career was in business sector, and of course we measured everything on return on investment. And return on investment is not always a financial component. It can be people, it can be programs. And I recognize that these programs just don't happen every time, every year. There's something coming up in the next election. You might, I've heard some different,
Sure.
You might want to share with our audience a little bit
Sure.
How that impacts their lives.
As Catherine mentioned, the Children's Services Council was established in 1990, and it was a small group of citizens brought it to the county commission, and state statute allows a community to create a Children's Services Council, but it has to be voted in by the community. So in 1990, 58% of the community said, yes, we want to establish a Children's Services Council. That vote comes up again in November 2014. And it's really quite simple. If the community votes yes to reauthorize the Children's Services Council, the network of 54 programs reaching 34,000 kids will continue. If it votes no, many of those programs, because they rely so heavily on the Children's Services Council, will either limit their capacity or, quite frankly, will have to close down.
And I can't think of a worse situation than that. And again, the word collaboration keeps coming in, because what the community is by definition is people and citizens working together for a common good. And when we have all these agencies and we have so many wonderful agencies here in St. Lucie County, but that they need to be unified, they need to be worked together, it needs to be a preventative mechanism, not just after the fact. And these are things that I think that our audience needs to know, especially this time of year. I mean, this is a good time of year where family and friends get together. They're reflective. Those of us that have the opportunity to get together is really critical, but there are so many who don't. And this is the ones that are left behind, because as the highs of the year are now, it's also for many people the lows of the year.
Right.
And again, I think it's so important for us, again, as a community to bond together. I'm gratified by the number of different organizations, the different businesses, the individual donors who pick up the telephone and say, how can we help?
Right.
And can you kind of share a little bit some of the specifics if somebody wants to get more involved, either as a volunteer, as a donor, or how can they get involved? Because we have a great community wanting to do that.
Sure. I told you we talked about how we've been involved in community forums, and what we're finding out is the community at large generally aren't aware of the resources that are out there. And there's been this big push about neighbors need to start looking out for neighbors. So I have a really simple ask, and that's simply that learn what's available in the community. Learn what's available in the programs through the Children's Services Council, because quite frankly, the viewers, they may not need it for themselves, but I guarantee you, whether it's a grandchild, a niece or a nephew, or it's a neighbor or a congregation member or a coworker, there's going to be somebody out there who says, I need an after-school program for my child, or I don't have health insurance for my children, or my family is really struggling. There are resources out there, and we're really on a effort to push to make sure that people are aware that if you're struggling or if you need help, reach out, because somebody's there. So what I would say is, if any of the viewers, if they want to learn about all the programs that are offered, we have this simple little, really two-page directory. It used to be 30 pages. We consolidated it down. A little two-page directory. If there's a business or a church that would like these to give out, or if there's somebody that wants to volunteer, we partner with 53 programs. I guarantee you every single one of them would like a volunteer or two. But they can call us at 408-1100.
That's terrific.
I think the public really needs to understand what value they're getting for their tax dollar, too. The amount of money that the average household is about $25 a year. That generates wonderful things for children. And when we did this go-round, it was many years getting prepared to go on the ballot. When we were getting on the ballot, we sold it in pizzas and sodas. So for the cost of a pizza and a soda a year, you can do all these wonderful things for children. Now maybe 2 pizzas and a soda.
Right.
Because pizzas have gotten cheap. But it is, when you look at what we ask of our community, it's very little compared to what they get for that. It has got to be one of the best return on investments that you could possibly make. And most of that is because of that safety net and the collaborative nature that we've been able to maximize all those issues. So it may look like a duplication of services to some people, but what it is building capacity of those services. And no place can you go where you could find agencies not competing with each other, but working together for the benefit of children and their community. And it is a wonderful thing to see, but it's even greater to be able to be part of it.
Absolutely. And it wasn't that long ago, I recall that St. Lucie County was the 3rd fastest growing county in the country.
Yes.
And again, and I live in an area where I'm starting to see people start to move here again, where the economy, the real estate's picked up a little bit. So even though we have these programs that have been around for 28 years or more in many cases, it's like I used to be in the auto industry where I said a used car is new to somebody. And so these programs is the same way. As people come into the community and are watching us here during, maybe they have some homes up north, but they're here during the holidays and whatever it might happen to be, to get involved. To find out, and if you don't know, ask your neighbors. Because again, with 58 programs, I believe you said, something to that effect, there's something for everybody. And I think that's really where I was talking to my brother just the other night, and he's looking at his retirement age, and he says, well, I don't think I can play golf every day. I said, get involved, get engaged. The return on investment for you individually and for the community will pay ridiculously amount of dividends for us. So we've just got a few minutes left to go, and I know there's so much to cover here. In the final minute or two that we have, Sean, what can we say to the community other than I know how much you thank them and appreciate them, because I see you all the time, and as I do Catherine, and you two are really strong ambassadors, and St. Lucie County is very, very pleased, very happy to have you. We're very fortunate to have people like you in this area that advocate for children. What would the final thoughts you'd like to sit there and share with our audience?
I actually have two things. One would be that if any of our viewers are watching and they know a family that needs some help, to call or go to the Children's Services Council website, because even if it's not a network, a program that's in our network, that we work very hard to make sure there is no duplication, everybody's working well together, even if there's not a program in there, we can help them. Because, like you said, there's going to be some families that are probably struggling during this holiday season.
Absolutely.
And we want to make sure that everybody has a good holiday season. I think the other thing that I'd like to share, or at least that's been going through my mind the whole time we've been talking, is just to take a moment or a second to reflect how unique we are here in St. Lucie County. There's only 7 Children's Services Councils in the state of Florida and in the nation. We have one here. There's only one district or one community that's a Kids at Hope community. That happens here in St. Lucie County. There's only one roundtable that's established that has every policymaker and every funder working together on a monthly basis to make sure that we're doing what's right for our children and families. I have the opportunity to travel across the state, as Catherine knows, often with Catherine, and the collaboration and the working together, that doesn't happen in other counties that we go to, but it does happen here. And I think that speaks to the leaders like Catherine and Dr. Gehrig and everybody, but it also just speaks to the uniqueness that, as Catherine said, when there's an issue, there's something at hand, we put the child at the center of the table, and we don't fight over who's going to get what. We just try to figure out what's best for that child.
And that's critical. Catherine, your final thoughts, please?
Well, my final thoughts is that people should know that we're not above making something a federal case. If it's an issue, we'll be glad to take it to the state for conversation. We meet with heads of departments and legislators, and if we need to, we'll talk to our federal agencies and our federal elected officials, because this is about the future of everybody, because when we focus on the child, when we make sure children have what they need to be successful, then there's no way that we all can't be successful and live in a better world.
Very well said. I guess what I can say in closing, one of the things that we wanted to do as a collaboration, this was Hibiscus Children's Center, but it was important to understand this is the Children's Services Council. As I end every one of my speeches when I talk to different groups, I want to leave one important thought. Where would these children be today if there was no Hibiscus Children's Center or Children's Services Council? Enjoy your holiday.